Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft video. This is a really exciting one. So, patch 8.3 Visions of N'Zoth comes with a world content loop, as we covered in yesterday's video, but the main new feature, the one that I think is really worth caring about, is Horrific Visions. It's a new type of gameplay system that Ian actually compared to the Mage Towers of 7.2. Well, we've played it and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any time and just get right into it. Now, you hand over the entrance fee for this new type of content to Rathian, and then you get dropped into either Stormwind or Orgrimmar, whichever one you choose. It's not the regular city though, it is a purple, corrupted Black Empire version of it. Now, in these visions, there's one main objective: to defeat the disciple of N'Zoth. And in Orgrimmar, that disciple is Thrall, who has drank the blood of N'Zoth and is unmaking the city he helped build. Then over in Stormwind, it's Lyria, who has actually turned on her family and given in to the Void Whisper, so kind of nice in terms of the theming. Now, your goal is to defeat that leader, and that goal is where players start, as your sanity meter actually drains a bit too fast to actually tackle any of the bonus objectives. Now, the core here is to collect as many resources as you can, but while actually leaving enough time to complete your main objective to defeat the disciple and get your reward chest. So all in all, it's about efficiency. Now, given the limited attempts over time, making a mistake feels really punishing, and the mistakes are actually quite easy to make. Why? Well, the enemies are, I'd say, simple but punishing at item level 420. They cast, interruptible things, projectiles, things to dodge. Really, like an errant void arrow can really chunk you, so playing it is an active endeavor. This kind of means that there's just a baseline tension through everything that you're doing. Now, that might make it sound a bit easy, but the bosses are pretty darn relentless. Like, Illyria definitely kept me on my toes, and, actually getting, to do real damage in the enemy, say in melee, wasn't all that easy. Now, that's not all that there is to do in the Horrific Visions. Far, far from it. The main thing, I would say, is actually the bonus objectives. Now, each district in the city has another boss, a unique mechanic, and loads more enemies to kill. And the idea is you want to do as many of those bonuses as is possible before you go to kill the disciple, because each district that you clear will give you a bonus chest of loot. That's not all though, as the disciple will actually gain an ability from the district bosses that you kill, which makes your final fight even more challenging. So it's called this really cool layering difficulty. Now, for an example of one of the unique mechanics found in one of the districts and a boss, the Valley of Spirits in Orgrimmar housed an Oblivion Elemental. This was a giant void creature who uses Hopelessness, an ability that silences the player, and you get barraged with void waves that you need to dodge until you pick up Hope, which is conveniently dropped nearby. So a pretty cool little encounter. Now, the zones mechanic was really cool. Madness, Dark Delusions. This would occasionally spawn a giant shadow version of your character, and the shadow version would chase you down, and if it hit you, it would cause sanity damage and a long stun. Now, alone, that effect doesn't pose an issue, but when you've got the Dark Delusion closing in on you, and you're also dodging a bunch of mob abilities, well, it starts to become really hectic, and most importantly, really fun. Now, it's not the best gameplay possible because it is group accessible and playable by any class, so, that limits the design as opposed to, say, the Mage Towers or, something specifically designed for, say, a marksmanship hunter or whatever, but as far as, really good quality PvE gameplay content, I've got to be honest, this really has nailed it for me. So the limiting factor in how long you can actually stay in one of these is sanity. It's just a bar that ticks down, although there are some things you can actually do to impact your sanity, and that's quite good actually. It felt a lot like working through the Chromie scenario. You're trying to be efficient, right? But you're also understanding your limits. And you've got this dipping sanity bar, but because you can somewhat influence your sanity bar, that's, it means that you're kind of playing around it. It doesn't feel like you're just capped by a hard timer. Now, to increase the amount of time that you've got to spend in the vision and how far you can get, you're relying on Titan research. Now, look, the current Titan research tree in PTR, I think it's pretty unfinished, but there are some interesting choices there. So you can kind of focus more on either group play or solo play. That's one choice you can make. It's perhaps not worth talking at length about this build's version of the Titan research, but Blizzard's intent there is clearly to provide a meaningful path of progression, one that will actually leave a player looking forward to what they can achieve in their next run and to actually impact gameplay. And I already experienced that. The research that gives you 500 sanity once you reach 0 once per run, not only is it a lifesaver, but it feels pretty good when it procs. I think because it's contextualized with, you not having that in your past run. And it kind of changes some of your decision making, because when you're running through one of these Horrific Visions, you're looking at your sanity meter and you're always trying to make that judgment. Do I get some more mobs? Do I try to go do this bonus district, or do I go straight to Illyria? Or you could be, say, running through, you could get some, accidental sanity losses, and you might think, damn, I messed up here. I failed to execute these mechanics, now I don't have enough time to do this other bit of content, so I have to go straight to the end boss. And I think having gameplay interactions like that is just a really strong aspect of this system's design. Now, in terms of the other Titan researches, there's one that grants a stacking temporary buff on kills, which kind of incentivizes, like chain pulling mobs to keep a streak going. Overall, I would say there are good fundamentals there, though I've got some concerns with the system that I will address a bit later on in this video. Now, there's one more interesting point to make about this feature, one that I think Halo players will actually remember, and I've not got to test this part yet, but it certainly seems good, and that is faceless masks. Now, judging by what is currently on the PTR, these are hidden within the horrific visions, and when found, they allow players to wear them in visions, and wearing them will increase the challenge level in a unique way while also increasing the reward, so kind of like skulls from Halo. So the idea of player-driven, or player-chosen challenge modifiers, that's not new to games. I brought up the Halo example, but seeing it be used in Warcraft in a way that I think will just so effectively let players choose their own difficulty and get more rewards, I think that actually feels kind of evolutionary. I really like what they're going for there. Now, there are 5 data mined ones on the PTR so far, and they do things like reduce your max sanity, cause players to leave void zones behind them, increase the number of madness effects on the player. Simply put, they'll make your journey a bit harder in return for more rewards. It's something you can opt into, and if you and any friends are up to the task, well, yeah, you can do that. And I think that's really good for adding longevity to this gameplay system. So with that, you might be wondering how you actually get into these visions. Well, this is where it becomes a bit less exciting, being honest with you. So to enter horrific visions, you need to collect coalescing visions from the Titan assaults and the lesser visions, which, by the way, there's a full look at in yesterday's video. Went up a bit late, so a lot of people missed it out. And basically, you combine those to create a vessel of horrific visions. Now, given that the sources are actually limited to regular cycles with the other content, it looks like the numbers are roughly balanced to give you enough resources for one horrific vision run per N'Zoth assault cycle, at least at the beginning, and the cycles are about 20 hours on PTR. Now, what's odd here is the cost to create a vessel doubled each time, with no notification or nothing about when that would reset. So maybe there's a measure there to stop players from farming too many visions in a certain lockout. It's kind of hard to know what the final idea for this is, and while I lament it being time limited, there could be a good reason there. I mean, first, right, with the Wither training scenario, having it be that, you've got one chance to get the maximum rewards, that does give you higher stakes, I suppose. Perhaps more relevantly, though, Blizzard may have chosen to do this because, although unfinished, the horrific visions do seem to tie into the gear progression of this patch, so that's one reason why Blizzard would want to gate it a bit, so let's talk about that. We know so far that the legendary cloak from Rathian is integral in this patch, being upgradable over time and also reducing the amount of sanity damage that its wearer takes. Now, it seems reasonable here that the visions will allow for progression on this cloak. That's not all, though. Right, this section is unconfirmed. It's speculative based on what I'm sort of piecing together, but it looks like this might be related to the Titan forging replacement that Ian said they were still working on. So take this bit with a large grain of salt, but it seems like the WoW team might be closely listening to the community discussion on benthic gear. So on the PTR currently, there's catch-up gear on a vendor in the heart, or in the Chamber of the Heart. Now, they sell certain bits of gear that are clearly placeholder. They range in item level from 420 to 455. Now, for some context here, the raid levels for the Ny'alotha raid are 430, 445, 460, and 475. Now, first off, the actual acquisition of this gear. So, on the PTR, with numbers that look considered, this gear can be purchased with the materials found within the horrific visions. Now, there were various orbs going up in rarity, so you had visions, darkest visions, and then madness orbs. The rarer orbs were rewarded once actually reaching further into the vision, so there's a potential here for a direct correlation of risk to reward. Now, also required is Echoes of Oblivion, which is another resource that came from completing the N'Zoth assaults that we covered in yesterday's video. Now this stuff does look like placeholder gear, but with the acquisition figured out, it does kind of spark off a few questions here about what Blizzard's final plan will be. And then on top of that, there are data mined gear tokens with no place in game. And what I'm thinking here is that they could be tied to this vendor and these resources. The data mine tokens actually originally suggests the ability to choose a relic of the Black Empire to turn into an item containing that relic's corruptive power. And if you choose the base component for your gear, then I guess this could be like an improved follow-up to benthic gear, relying a bit less on, say, randomness to get the effect that you want. Maybe. We'll just have to see. And then we'll also have to see if the Titan Forging replacement results in like the same issues with like rolling for a gem slot, but we've certainly got a lot more to learn here. It's just not fully implemented. There's even been datamine corrupted UI elements that suggest that Mother is going to be doing something to our gear. There's also a new unexplained aspect to the new Azerite essences, that they actually reduce a corruption stat. Now this is entirely speculative, but I may be imagining a system of Black Empire gear that you can wear, maybe at the risk of increasing a corruption stat, or maybe you could cleanse it via Mother to remove some negative effects. It's kind of hard to tell right now. Hopefully we'll see Blizzard clarify in the coming weeks, but that's just some speculation based off the horrific vision resources. Now overall, I'd say there's a ton of positives to take out of this content. It does effectively scale up to 5 players, the mechanics certainly do support that. Sure, the most efficient group's probably just 5 damage dealers and playing perfectly, but if you're more prone to mistakes, then bringing a tank or a healer or both could make a lot of sense. Overall, as a bit of content though, I would say, look, it's well designed. I think they've clearly learned lessons from the Chromie scenario, which I like, from the Troves of the Thunder King as well, even from the Wither training scenario and maybe a bit of the Mage Towers as well, and how they're approaching this type of content. And I think that's all really good. I think that's great content to draw inspiration from. Fundamentally, this allows players, well, self-expression via gameplay, and it gives you a sliding scale of success based on the amount of challenge that you opt into, especially with those faceless masks. And if this is tying into the gear like I suggested, then I actually think this could be another evolutionary step in World of Warcraft's modern development. Now that said though, it's not all perfectly positive. There's one major point that could hold some of this content back, and that is the reliance on the research for progression. Maybe we were just primed by Ian's comparison to the Mage Tower, but I just don't think that the horrific visions are the same. I think they are a different beast. While it is made easier by gear, it does not appear to remotely be possible to complete it fully without the research, and if the current research tree is close to accurate, then the final bit of research could end up trivializing it, so I'm a bit worried they'll go a little bit overboard there. There's also the general fear, I think, as with all content, that the good design could just go terribly wrong in balance, and maybe with a reliance on the research mentioned here and it being gated by resources, and then those resources being gated by time, that this could turn into a bit of a grind that's not really kind of going anywhere, that players might not enjoy as much. And I suppose it's not just that, because relying heavily on scaling and time gating, I think players could end up having severely different experiences across the board here, and that could undermine some of the, I think, absolutely excellent work that Blizzard have done with the fundamentals of how this new gameplay system has been designed. Overall though, I'll say this, I think this is one of the most interesting features they developed in quite some time. I think from the initial testing, the gameplay has absolutely lived up to it. I've been craving challenging solo gameplay in WoW for a long time, and look, I know, it's an MMO, yes, you can do this with a party, but there's times where you just want to log in and, chip away at something, where you don't want to go into a raid or a dungeon. And right now in WoW, the world content frankly sucks, and having this as an option is really, really good. I mean, it really does just seem to be the perfect example of a system that's got super relevant gameplay, good rewards, and good challenge. And what I love even more is that Blizzard they have the stones here to make it a proper part of the game. Like, Blizzard have done solo content with a higher level of challenge in the past, but it's almost never been core to the game. So seeing them do this almost is insane as compared to what they've done in the past. And I've got to wonder if this is Blizzard realizing that a higher percentage of Warcraft's playtime has got to be mechanically impactful. And if this does mean that they've realized that, it's got good implications for the future. Now that said, I do have one concern for this, and it is that when this patch is gone, will they just abandon the concept for another year or two? That's just what happened with the Mage Towers. Sure, they were working in this, I get that, but the gameplay niche filled by the Mage Towers was still missing for 2 years in their product, and I think that really hurt them a lot. So I suppose overall, if this is an indication that they value this type of gameplay and they think it should have a permanent place in World of Warcraft going forward, then I'm really excited. I mean, if you look at this patch, let's be real, the lesser visions, I mean, they're neat, sure, but they're not groundbreaking. They're kind of a weak version of this, and the assaults are, very typical bits of content, that clearly to me says that Blizzard are leaning on the horrific visions to be a major part of the patch's gameplay. So because of that, it just suggests that they really do have a major plan for this type of thing in the future, and if so, very good indeed. That said, I would love to hear what you have got to think about this system. I'm especially interested in what you think about the replayability, what do you think those masks will do, the opt-in difficulty, the sort of sliding, increasing difficulty as you try to bite off more and find out, have you bitten off more than you can chew? I'd love to hear what you think, so let me know down below. And with that, thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.